Good evening and welcome to another book review. This evening we are reviewing Stephen Baldwin's The Unusual Suspect. The Unusual Suspect. Now, I'm sure you've heard of Stephen Baldwin. He's a famous actor. He's part of the Baldwin brothers acting family. You may have heard of William. I'm sure you've heard of Alec Baldwin. I suppose the film that you've probably heard of the most of Stephen Baldwin's is The Usual Suspect. It won many awards and was a well-respected, critically acclaimed film. Hence the name The Unusual Suspect. And it is an unusual suspect. There's a lot of things in this that you wouldn't know about Stephen Baldwin perhaps. And I found it a really refreshing read. Now I first came to an understanding of Stephen Baldwin and his faith and about, I don't know how many years ago it was, but it was during Big Brother and everyone was saying there's a Christian on. So I was watching it and on this particular episode, he ended up chatting away, having a great conversation with a guy called Alex Reid, who was a case fighter, and he even prayed the believer's prayer with him. Now, whether you think that he rushed into that with Alex Reid or not, one thing is for sure, it meant that the believer's prayer went out live on Channel 4, Channel 5 or whatever it was, all across the nation, which was just fantastic. You know, people could hear that and know exactly what they needed to pray and mean it if they wanted to become a Christian. So, this book is all about how Stephen Baldwin lived his acting career, how he became a Christian, how Christ impacted his life and that of his wife after that, and the mission that he then went on to do. And he's led many people to the Lord with his work and his evangelism. So he's a really great guy, love him to bits. And this book is such a great, refreshing read because when somebody becomes a Christian, and they've not been a Christian for very long, you know, they've not adopted all the kind of terminology of Christendom, and the way they put things across is so refreshing. And it's like when a new Christian comes to a prayer meeting for the first time, and their prayers are just so refreshingly new, and they're not using the same kind of language as everybody else. It's not been taught in a way, you know. It's just refreshing. And this is a refreshing book that talks, and you can see his radical desire for people to know Jesus coming straight through in the book. So let's just turn to a little bit of it. I think we'll probably stick the light on because it's getting quite dark now. And we'll read and just give you a bit of background so you understand what's going on here. They've just employed a housekeeper at his wife's request. His wife is called Kenya. The housekeeper's called Augusta, and she's always singing about Jesus all the way through the house. So it's really fascinating what happens at the end of this. So let's have a listen. So that's when Kenya came to me and asked, "Honey, did you happen to notice Augusta singing?" Being clueless, I said no or whatever or something like that. Kenya filled me in on what I'd missed. She said, "Well, she's literally always singing about Jesus." I responded with an eloquent, "Huh? Good for her. I'm sure she needs that. God bless her," and went back to work. And I meant what I said. God bless her. If she needs Jesus, good for her. It wasn't like I was anti-Jesus at that point in my life. I grew up a Catholic. And although my family wasn't exactly devout, my brothers and sisters and I had gone through catechism and all of that as kids. One of my brothers had even been an altar boy. Along the way, I'd read a little bit of the Bible. I found it interesting, but hard to understand. Maybe that's why I didn't pursue God back then. I don't know. By the time I hit early adulthood and Hollywood, I'd stopped thinking about God and religion and got busy being Stevie B. They called me the Fun Baldwin, and believe me, I tried to live up to the name. I dove into the Hollywood party scene with the drugs and alcohol and anything else that would help me have a good time. Eventually, this part of my life started interfering with the rest of my pursuits. I slowly started to understand that I had to make a choice between focusing on my career and potentially succeeding, or letting the drugs and alcohol kill me. Then Kenya came to me, and keep in mind this took place long before we were married, and she told me, "Babe, I can't do this anymore. You're cute, you're funny, you're a great kisser, but you disappear for 3 days at a time and I don't hear anything from you. I can't live like this." That's when I joined a 12-step program and I heard I needed God myself. Step 3 of the 12 steps says, make a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand Him. And that's what I did. I didn't have a choice. Not if I wanted to get sober. And I did want to get sober. I wanted to do it for myself because I was tired of what the drugs were doing to me. And I wanted to do it for Kenya because I didn't want to lose her. Chicks change things, they really do. By God's grace, I have now been clean and sober for over 17 years. I didn't pursue any kind of deep relationship with God, but He played enough of a role in my life back then that having my housekeeper walk around the house singing about Jesus didn't make me mad or cause me to dismiss her. God was cool. He helped me clean up my life. I wasn't anything close to being born again, nor did I ever think I would be. But if our new housekeeper wanted to sing about Jesus all day, I wouldn't hold it against her. Live and let live, whatever. After a few more days of listening to Augusta singing, Kenya had finally had enough. She went to her and said, "You're doing a great job, but I couldn't help but notice your singing. I was wondering why every song is about Jesus. Perhaps you know some other songs you could sing as well." As soon as my wife said this, Augusta burst out into hysterical laughter. Kenya failed to see the humour in what she had just said. "I'm your boss," she said. "What is so funny?" Augusta quickly straightened herself up and told my wife, "I apologise. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I'm just so happy you noticed my singing. I'm very excited that you came over to me and asked me this question." By this point, Kenya started to wonder about this woman's sanity. Then Augusta said again, I mean no disrespect, but I find it quite amusing that you think I'm here to clean your house." "Okay, you're kind of freaking me out here," Kenya replied. "What do you mean you find it amusing I think you are here to clean my house? Why else would you be here?" Augusta then proceeded to tell Kenya how before she accepted the job with us, she went to a church in Brazil for advice. Moving to a new country and starting a new life at 55 is a frightening prospect for anybody. Augusta hesitated in making such a drastic change, at least until she sought God's direction on the matter. Rather than offer counsel, her pastor invited the rest of the church to pray over her. In the midst of that prayer meeting, a member of the congregation stood and said he had a prophetic word. That is a message straight from the Lord through the Holy Spirit. This person said God wanted Augusta to go ahead and move to the States and start working for us. But that was only the beginning. Augusta went on to tell my wife that God had told her through her church that if she came and worked for us, we would one day come to Christ and eventually have our own ministry. Now Kenya was really freaked out. She muttered something like, "Oh, that's interesting. Excuse me," and ran to find me. Kenya walked into my office and said, "Honey, guess what Augusta just said? We're going to become born-again Christians someday and have our own ministry." Now it was my turn to double over in laughter. All of this took place in 1993, nearly 4 years after I had become sober, and 8.5 years before the prophecy given to Augusta came true. Read on to find the exciting journey that Stephen Baldwin and his wife Kenya go on as they end up serving the Lord.